What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified of these daily videos. This week, we are doing a special 5-part series about the coming hard fork with Bitcoin and how exactly you can prepare for it the right way. This is part 2. So welcome back. Today, what we're talking about is where exactly you should keep your coins. One, to capitalize on this fork itself, right? How do you make sure that you get the coins? And two, make sure that you are in a safe position. And three, if you want to be active about this, how to capitalize on it, right? What sort of timing do you need to worry about or think about, I should say, and what are the factors involved? And if you didn't watch yesterday's video, go watch that or just download the free PDF guide, coinmastery.com/Segwit2x. And you'll get a sense of the strategies. Later this week, we're going to talk about the people that are active, what sort of executional strategies you can take, right? How do you set your limits? What sort of scalp should you do? Should you hold it? You know, things like that. I think it is important to point out a fair amount of feedback was that a lot of people are just stepping back and letting this thing happen, which we talked a little bit about as one of the considerations to make in the walkthrough yesterday. I think it's important to touch back on that. If you don't want to get involved in this, that's not a bad thing. That is just a choice. It's a strategy. And so there's nothing wrong with just setting these and forgetting them and coming back in about a week and a half and going about your business that way, where you just buy the dips, hold, and play the long game. So this is more about just making sure that you have all the information you need to make the right decisions about this particular fork. So let's just quickly jump into Bitcoin, because I think that there is some interesting things happening in Bitcoin recently. And then we're going to talk about, I'm going to go through all the popular wallets. And so I'm going to kind of breeze through them so that you can know what to do in your particular case. I'll link to all these so that you can go check out the blog post yourself and get fully verified information. Talk a little bit about that Ethereum Parity Wallet hack that happened, I think, this morning. Not even a hack. It's like I guess it was a hack, but a couple $100 million worth of Ether locked up. A little bit about futures, and then something that may be affecting a bunch of people if they are getting new phones this holiday season, maybe the iPhone 10 or whatever else. A couple things to keep in mind with that. So with Bitcoin, we saw yesterday, let me zoom in here. I'm on the Coinbase. I'm on a 5-minute just because we're really going to be talking on a micro scale for the next few days. And yesterday there was a pretty solid drop, and more importantly, there was a fairly sizable altcoin pump as it related to that drop, meaning a lot of the cash that came out of Bitcoin was going into alts, at least for a little while. And as this action continued to play out, it became more and more clear that the subsequent drops were driving alts less. So a lot of the early sell-off was people that were going to take Bitcoin and take that cash and go to altcoins. The other sell-off was a lot of people that were just moving out to fiat. And that's always an important thing, right? That's how you get into bull traps, as I put on Twitter the other day, is being able to watch the altcoin movement as it relates to the downswing in Bitcoin. So what this means for you is that there are a good amount of people that are in positions just like you and I are both in, where we have a bunch of altcoins, we have a bunch of Bitcoin, whatever else. And they're trying to front run the fork by buying alts cheap now, because the Segwit2x it's kind of far off, but there's so much uncertainty. People are starting to wonder, is it even going to happen? Is the price really baked into this? Are the futures going to be worth anything? And so this may give people a little bit of a security blanket. That's why it's starting to sell off a little bit. That's why it's low. And so over the next week, what you're going to see is it may pump way back up, because people are going to say, well, no matter what, I still want to get that 2x free coin. Or it may just hover around this, thinking that this is already baked into the price. and this will be the main event. I personally think it's going to go up a little bit because I think that with the amount of new money continuing to come in, that is, you can't forget that we're still in the middle of a huge bull run. Like the trend is still moving this way, so to speak, when you look at the daily candles. So even with our own personal, whatever we're thinking about, there's still a lot of new people buying in every single day, which is keeping that Bitcoin price on a bull trend overall. And so I think that even with the uncertainty or whatever, I think that there will probably still be some upward trends in Bitcoin over the next week, which is what I'm really waiting for. I'm really not going to have anything totally set until this weekend, most likely. Now, let's talk about timing. Let's talk about where you can keep your stuff. This is a Google Calendar, and this is really the simplest way to think about it. If nothing else, this is the way you should be looking at it with your coins. Starting on Wednesday the 15th, assume that wherever your Bitcoins are, that's where they're going to be until the end of Friday the 17th. If Segwit2x goes through, if everything happens the way that everyone thinks it might happen, or most people think it's going to happen, these 3 days, you should assume that you are not going to be able to deposit or withdraw Bitcoin onto a particular exchange. Now, within the exchange, you'll be able to trade accordingly. You just can't move it off of the blockchain. That's the difference, okay? So within these 3 days, that's the way to think about it. So if you want to trade altcoins, you need to have Bitcoin on your altcoin exchange on Bittrex, which we'll talk about in a second, and things like that. So that's really the way to think about this. It may get extended a little bit further out, but you really want to be set to go by the 15th, because 24 hours before the hard fork, if it happens, will go down. Now, when I say if it happens, there is a chance that this hard fork does not get enough support and this doesn't happen at all. And that's okay. That's okay, because you're still going to see a massive amount of price action, most of which will still hold true for the strategies we talked about yesterday. But keep that in mind. That's a possibility as well, which we'll talk about more later this week. Now, what I want to do is run through the exchanges, because I think that this is important for everybody. And I'm going to link to this because once you've heard it once, there's no reason to make a long video about this. So if you're on Coinbase, you go to blog.coinbase.com, you go to the latest post, because these seem to continue to update this based on whatever factors. But they're basically saying if your coins are on Coinbase, you're going to have a 24-hour window on both sides of the hard fork. They're going to automatically credit you. You'll be good to go, and you'll be able to trade it as soon as it's done. So as soon as this November 17th thing is done, there'll be 2 wallets. Let's say you have 2 Bitcoin regular and 2 Bitcoin 2x. You'll log in and it'll be there, and you can trade it accordingly immediately. So if it's on Coinbase, you are 100% good to go. This is just the timing, and you'll want to check the blog probably next week just to make sure they didn't update it at all. Now, the same thing is true for Gemini. If anybody's using Gemini, also a big and trustworthy exchange in the US, they have a similar timeline: 1 day before, 1 day after. And you can read through. I'm not going to get into all the details because this is really, it's really individual. But these guys are more of a 48-hour period. It's important to know that on these exchanges, on all the exchanges, Bitcoin is the only one that's affected. So if you want to deposit Ethereum, if you want to deposit Litecoin, if you want to deposit anything else, you can still do that. You just can't touch your Bitcoin wallets. That's the only one that's affected. Okay, Bittrex just came out yesterday and said that they're really doing the same thing, where as long as the Bitcoin is in there, you're going to get credited for the snapshot. It's going to be 24 to 48 hours type of thing. And then they're really going to let the market decide. If there is a Bitcoin 2x market, they may allow you to trade it. You will be credited, but you may not be able to trade it yet. This will obviously be updated. So if you keep your money, if you keep your Bitcoin on Bittrex, you're okay. You will get credited within the exchange, and you can trade your Bitcoin accordingly. You just can't deposit or withdraw it during that freeze period. Binance is actually kind of ambiguous, meaning they may put out some new news. If I would not recommend keeping your Bitcoin on Binance's exchange for this particular fork. That's just they don't seem to have any really dialed in information. You know, it's based out of Hong Kong. It's just, I don't know. Coinbase and Gemini they have massive insurance policies. They have massive regulatory compliance stuff going on. They have two-factor authentication that's both very, very strong. And Bittrex, similar with two-factor authentication. If you're going to leave it on an exchange, that I would not put it on Binance. I would leave it on Bittrex, Coinbase, or Gemini. And then, you know, with your own exchange, if you have something different, you can go from there. Trezor, the same idea. They kind of did the same thing with Bitcoin Cash already. And so the difference with this is that you own your private keys. So typically you're going to need to split the coins yourself, which is usually one click of a button. That's how it was on Bitcoin Cash. It's not the same process because there's implemented replay protection. So you're going to have a manual Bitcoin 2x coin split. Okay, this is new. I guess they updated this last time I read this. But either way, you'll be credited if it's on your Trezor account. It just looks like you're going to have to do a little bit more work. So it may be a little bit more than pushing a button like Bitcoin Cash. Same with the Ledger. Now, the Ledger, I appreciate what they're doing here. They tried to make it clear, but it ended up getting really complicated. All you need to know is you will get credited if your Bitcoin is in your ledger during the hard fork. Okay? So Coinbase, GDAX, Gemini, Bittrex, Trezor, Ledger will all credit you if your coins are sitting on those wallets during the hard fork. You will get credit for them. Other than that, if you have a wallet or an exchange that's outside of that realm, you're going to go to the blog on that site and make sure that you check it. And as it relates to your strategy, right, the deposits and withdrawals, if you are planning on being active during this time period, note that you're going to be active on the exchange that you choose. Meaning, if you want to trade altcoins during the hard fork as it happens, so as soon as you see a snapshot, you want to buy altcoins, you're going to want to keep your coins on Bittrex. You want to make sure you have two-factor authentication, and that's where you want to be. Because if you have it on your Trezor and you try to send it, it won't work until they reopen the wallet. Okay, so that's what you need to know. As it relates to your strategy from yesterday, where do you keep your coins? If you're just holding them, hold them on your Trezor or your Ledger. Maybe it's on Coinbase, whatever. You can just hold them. You'll get the snapshot. You're good to go. If you're doing the altcoin trading moves, you want to keep some of them of your Bitcoin on Bittrex, so you can immediately flip it. So again, I will link all this because I know that individually you will all have your own questions or whatever. I can't answer everybody's personal questions, individuals, but this is really what you need to know. Assume that 15th, 16th, and 17th, wherever your coins are, that's the ecosystem that you can operate in. All right? Cool. So next, what I will say is as this week goes on, we're going to talk a little bit more about price action, what's going to happen, and if this Segwit2x thing doesn't happen. So we'll definitely address that more often. There's more and more information coming out about that. We're going to talk about if you do want to be active in the altcoin, what altcoins will probably get the most price action, historically speaking, which I call emotional alts. And we'll walk through that probably on Thursday. So stay tuned for all of that. Other big news that happened this morning was Ethereum had a big breach of security, vulnerability, whatever you want to call it. And it was a developer he says he was messing around, which is, it is what it is. It was a hack, or it was a vulnerability that was exposed in the code that caused a ton of wallets to freeze. Now, this is so far, this is specific to the Parity multi-sig wallet. That means if you use Parity's, P-A-R-I-T-Y, if you use their wallet service, or if you have an ICO that was using their wallet service, you may be affected. That means that your Ethereum currently is locked. And for them to get it unlocked, they may need to do some sort of hard fork. So for anyone who doesn't use Parity, right? If you have your Ether on my Ether wallet, like with a Ledger or with a Trezor or something like that, or if you have your Ether on Coinbase or whatever else it may be, you're probably not going to be affected by this as it stands. This is going to continue to unfold. I'll keep you guys up to date as I find out more information, but most people are not going to be affected by this on your individual Ethereum. However, this is going to affect, obviously, the price of Ethereum on the markets, right? If we just open up Bittrex, let's see where we are right now. Ethereum's, it's going down. The USD price is going down a little bit, but you can see it's getting a little bit of a sell-off, which is interesting because earlier this year, I think it was in July, a similar hack happened of like, what was it? 30 million. It was like, remember that white hat stuff that went down? And there was a huge drop in market cap. And now this is suffering, way more people are suffering and getting way bigger dollar amounts. And you're not seeing quite as much of a market cap drop. So in some senses, that means the market is a little bit more resilient to this. There's also way more other choices. But it's also, it makes you realize how early in Wild West this world is. I mean, these are regular people who are coding this stuff, and they're like, oh, whoops, we forgot to do that. But by the way, $250 million just got, frozen. So we'll see what happens with this. I think that stuff like this is really unfortunate for the people that get affected. I think that this definitely makes you realize how important security and rock solid code is when you are investing into companies or when you're buying coins on a particular company. And I think that there's clearly two parties in crypto. There's the Bitcoin proof of work mining style, inflation is evil world. And then you've got the Ethereum, the kind of tech is king, let's build a bunch of applications. Let's change the world. And these are, loosely speaking, the two buckets. And Bitcoin world is much more about security and almost inefficiency, but having everything be very, very tight and by the book. And Ethereum is a little bit more flexible and more creative. And so there's pros and cons to each one of these things, right? Like the Bitcoin, you get all this infighting, but you get rock solid products or, security. And Ethereum, the dev community, for the most part, gets along very, very well, but you have products that are all over the place in many ways. And so that's the big question about which is going to win, right? And your guess is as good as mine. It could end up being they both win, just in different ways. One becomes finance, one becomes technology. Who knows? But that's what this really starts to illustrate. And so for you as an investor, that's what you should take away from this. Assuming you weren't impacted, which if you were, it's a super huge bummer, But this starts to show that there are going to be new asset classes within crypto, that there are going to be new ways to look at the technology, to look at blockchain. And as an investor, the important piece is not only to go into the one that you believe in, if you're attracted to the Bitcoin or to the Ethereum, either one of those worlds, because you get it and you agree with it. As an investor, you need to be able to look at those objectively and evaluate where the growth and where the value comes from now, and what will come from in the future as it relates to the growth of crypto. So this is a very, very new and breaking story. The bottom line for most of you is that it probably won't affect you if you're not using Parity Wallet, but we'll keep this up to date. Twitter's typically the best place to figure this out. Just don't get caught up in all the people Just don't get caught up in wasting half an hour on Twitter. It's easy to do. Now, the CME group, who, if you remember, they're launching the futures market, which is going to be quite a move. And the more I dig into futures markets, the more I think that this is going to bring a whole lot of new, I don't know what the word is, not uncertainty, but it's going to be a whole lot of new factors to take into account with markets. Because when you research it and you look at what futures markets did to big markets, specifically precious metals and big commodities markets, in many ways, futures markets manipulated those and drove the price up and down to serve specific interest groups, and as opposed to being a hedge for large institutional investors. And so as we see this, as we see CME futures come in, which is a massive trading desk, they have incredible reach. The early implications as it relates to bringing more money in may help Bitcoin's price boost, right? And as this article points out, they're really going to try to smooth out the volatility because you don't have to buy Bitcoin to actually hedge yourself. So you don't have to, the price action won't be as big in Bitcoin, which is good for some, not good for others. But over the long term, if you look at what futures markets do for mature markets, which we have a long way to go before we're at that point with Bitcoin or with anything in crypto, it can get a little dicey. So I'm starting to look at this, right? When I first released this, first talked about this, I looked at this as a very exciting thing. And now as I'm, listening to a lot of what you guys say, I'm researching this, I'm talking to people that have been in finance for a long time. I'm starting to look at futures and thinking to myself, somebody's going to win big on this. And is it going to be futures holders? Is it going to be the traders? Is it going to be Bitcoin holders? Is it going to be crypto? Who's going to win big? Because somebody will win big. And I really want to make sure that I'm on the right side of that, if possible. And I don't know the answer to that, which I can't give that answer to that, but I'm starting to see this in a different lens. I'm starting to change the way that I'm seeing this as I learn about futures. And I would encourage everybody to start to look at the history of futures markets and how they impact big institutional markets. So this will also be an unfolding story. Now, the last thing I want to touch on, what the heck? Dude, so many ads. I can't even hear this stuff. Let me close this. iPhone 10 is coming out. Google, was it Pixel 2? Samsung's got a new phone. Samsung, Note S? I don't know. I can't keep up with them all. But in Q4, everyone buys new phones, statistically. And then, or else someone gets for the holidays or whatever. In crypto, this is particularly useful for you guys because if you use Google Authenticator or Authy or anything for your Coinbase, for your Gemini, for your Bittrex, Poloniex, anything, you need to make sure that you transfer your authenticator first before you switch your phone over. Because if you switch your phone over and then you try to do it on the exchanges, it's going to take a week, maybe even 2 weeks, especially during the holidays, for them to re-verify who you are and to get back into your account. And that's going to be really difficult for anybody who wants to check their stuff or make a deposit or withdraw or whatever. And so on all the websites, they'll show you what you need to do. There's plenty of articles, and I can link this article, this CNET article, if this will be helpful for you guys. But I would encourage you to go to the exchanges. It really comes down to you get a QR code and you print that out so that when you get the new phone, you can just reactivate using the same QR code login information and verify the new phone. But the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of people are going to get new phones in the next 3 months. A lot of people watching and listening to this. And this is one of those things where if you don't think about it now and you go ahead and do it, you're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I just locked myself out of Coinbase or Bittrex for 2 weeks. I gotta wait for their support to get back to me. This is an easy fix and it's something important to do. And I wanted, this is just something that I've seen people post about, something that's on my mind that is an easy way to prevent yourself some headaches moving forward. All right. So quick reminder, by next Wednesday, if this fork goes through, have your Bitcoin sitting on the places you want it to be sitting on. I will link as many of these support articles as I can. If you have a different exchange or a different piece of hardware, go just Google it. Make sure for yourself. But for most of you, for 99% of you who are watching this, Coinbase, GDAX, Gemini, Bittrex, Trezor, Ledger will all credit you for the coins, right? You might not be able to get it immediately. You might not get it until like the 17th or maybe even the 18th, and then you can trade it, but you will get credit for them if it's on these exchanges, okay? With that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up today. I'm going to go back and just watch this Ethereum thing unfold, check the markets. And, I think there was one more thing I wanted to mention if you're still hanging around. Remember yesterday we talked about Verge and how it was interesting to watch the theory of, hey, they had news come out last week, and then the product actually came out and the price went up. And the theory yesterday was, let's watch this and see what the price does based on this price already being baked in. And lo and behold, the price went way down. And obviously this is only one data point. This is a P of 1, but I am starting to see this happen over and over, where anytime that news is publicly available, it is baked in the price on some level. And any spikes that you see are people that are just late to the party, and that will eventually get shaken out. And I think the same thing is happening here, so that any ongoing growth that you see from something like Verge is going to be based on the protocol, right? Based on the business, how well does it do, things like that. So I thought that was super important to remember and to realize that you can start to see these trends, the patterns that happen to all the different coins, right? News cycles. How does news cycles affect price? We're starting to see it be less effective and a little bit more predictable. For you, what that means is that the more you hear about people talking about, oh, there's news coming out, there's this coming out, oh, on this date, the new wallet's coming out, that is much less effective than it used to be at driving price. It just means they're closer to getting more adoption, which will drive the price down the road. So I thought that was important because it's a helpful takeaway for a lot of people. Tomorrow, we'll talk a little bit more about Segwit2x and how to prepare. We'll probably have some PDFs for tomorrow. And then in the meantime, I will catch you guys later. Peace out.